the next thing I wanted to talk about is depression. So, as I mentioned earlier, children and young adults in India, the US, and for that matter, the world have we're facing the highest rates of depression and suicide today.
True.
I think some studies have quoted about 40% of the youth population that have experienced depression.
Yes.
So right now, in modern science, there's no cure. Currently, we're relying on seeing a psychologist, therapist, and drugs to reduce symptoms. Do you think introspection, yoga, meditation, possibly chanting, can help with us deal with this epidemic? Is there something that our ancient teachings can help to, enlighten us a little bit more on this that maybe modern science has either not caught up with yet or we're not aware of yet?
I wouldn't completely dismiss the alternative of a psychiatrist.
Yeah,
Not
to
totally.
reduce that, I think that's important to say.
Important because I know this. Some people who are severely depressed and who are undergoing treatment and who also may be having some kind of a psychosis or a schizophrenic disorder, they come saying that maybe if you learn Kriya Yoga, you will be cured. I tell them, sorry, this is meant for people who are normal. This is not a cure. This is not a therapy. Because it is dangerous. Then such people, if they start doing, they become worse. Because already they are depressed and then they are cutting themselves out from the outside world and going within. It can create more problems than give a solution. So I wouldn't rule out that it is possible to get some help from a psychiatrist.
Yeah,
no question.
Definitely.
However, what we have to look at is the root of the problem, the cause. And the cause seems to be that they are kind of rudderless. They don't know where to hang their worries on. There's nothing. They're supportless. These young people who suffer from depression, they think this world is all there is. And this is, you know how depression comes when you try to do something and you try many times and it doesn't succeed. Your desires are not fulfilled. Then you get into depression. You go steady with a girl for 5 years and one day you see that she is in the bar with another guy. You get depression. So somehow there is also through the ancient teachings of meditation and so on, more as a preventive than as a cure. While there are some limited curative effects which you can do, physically there are many, but for the mind, I would say if you start young and start the practice of meditation, basically watching the breath, calming the mind and so on, then it's possible that in the midst of all these shocks, you still survive without going into depression.
Okay.
This is important. But unfortunately, there is no such thing to hang on to. And one great danger is when somebody goes to somebody and says, I want to learn this, you have to become part of this or part of that. There are many people who don't want to become part of anything. They just want to be themselves.
Definitely.
So they have no way. Get it? So people who are young and who have passed through the young age and still not become old, they should take it upon themselves to teach young people how to handle this. That you need to do some kind of silent meditation, which doesn't mean you have to surrender to the guru or any such nonsense. I mean, you just need to do some kind of a technique, and the technique will work no matter you surrender to some A, B, C or anybody. If that technique doesn't work, then there's something wrong with the technique. It's nothing to do with the person.
Okay.
You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So if that can be introduced side by side with the ordinary education that we have,
Side by side with seeing a therapist and maybe taking the medication.
That is only if you are affected. I'm saying also as a preventive.
Okay.
If you can have that, then you have a safe landing when something happens.
Okay.
You know, you don't really totally disintegrate and fall down. You have something to hold. So that should be inculcated even in the beginning. You don't have to wait for depression.
Okay.
So as you do cycling, walking, trekking, exercises, yoga practices, physical, you also do some mind practices so that the mind also learns how to exercise, how to keep calm, how not to get too affected by ups and downs.
Okay.
So that if you need, there are many ancient sources to draw from.
Okay.
But you need to read them carefully and you need somebody who has already gone through this to kind of explain it to you.
Okay. And maybe we could put together some sources, not during the video, but leave a link in the description
Sure.
box for someone who'd like to find
Yes,
those
yes.
resources. And for somebody who is affected by depression.
For them, there are some exercises which might help, like listening to music,
Okay.
or watching your breath, keeping away from narcotics and alcohol and things like that. So in some way, if you can work this out, maybe the mind should be put into a rhythmic pattern. Because what has happened is the rhythm has been disturbed. So this is part. But one shouldn't overdo it. One shouldn't suddenly say, now you stop all medication with the psychiatrist and start. No, this can have dangerous consequences. So it should go slowly, and then when you find that you're steady, then you can probably, and if it's a good psychiatrist, he'll know how to get the dose down and down and down, and finally stop. This is possible. No good psychiatrist will say you should always keep eating these medicines.
Definitely, yeah.
Nobody. I mean, if he's a good one. And then when you're settled, then you suddenly find that I don't need it. See? Now for that, you should develop some confidence, and they need someone who can give them confidence. Not make him dependent on you, but give some confidence, saying that, look, it's okay, it doesn't matter, we can still work on this. Mostly what happens is, they were faced with, when people say, oh, there is no use, this fellow now, it is gone. Somebody says, it's okay, man, or lady, or whatever, not to worry, it's okay, because even in spiritual life, we sometimes go through some kind of depression, many times, especially if you're very keen on that. So you know how to, and you go through it and you come out unscathed. So if somebody can tell them, look, I have been like you at some point, but I've come out of it. And also, we need to look more into the understanding of these states called depression, schizophrenia, etc. We don't look enough. We just use labels. Honestly, I don't think that there are more than 1% people in this world, even that is doubtful, who have not passed through some kind of depression. For some it has become so much that it has its outward symptoms. For some it is not so much. Because of various reasons, they learn how to cushion it. But everybody in some way goes through it at some point in life. One. Then about schizophrenia. The word schizo means split, and phrenia is brain. How many of us really are not split brained? I mean, tell me, in some way. One is thinking this, one part of the mind is like this, another part of the mind is like this. There is conflict. Only when it gets exaggerated that people are labeled. We all live in a mad world. But when it gets exaggerated, then people label them and say, this guy needs attention.
Okay.
So, if you can talk to these people like this way, saying you and I are not different men, come on, let's see how to get this off. Get this off. Can we hold hands and walk? Then there is a solution. In most cases, there may be some cases where it has come out due to some drugs or something, which is a completely chemical thing, and only a psychiatrist or a pathologist would be able to work on this. But generally, I think in most cases, about 10 to 15% of this is there in most human beings, and it can be handled by just understanding the person and being with the person and kind of helping them to sort it out.
Okay.
Chanting helps, singing helps, good music helps, walks help, new places help sometimes. Because suppose I live in this house and I'm all the time depressed. If I come back into this house, the depression sets in. If I go change and go somewhere, it might go. But this has to be found out through experiment.
Right. And it has to be something, I'm guessing, that you love, like a chant that you love. You shouldn't do it.
Shouldn't be. You're right. A person who has been brought up in a Christian background all his life, you suddenly ask them to say Om Namah Shivaya, it makes no sense, right? So he can go and listen to the organ in the church, the music. Some of it is beautiful. And maybe sing Hail Mary. It might help him, it may not help us. So this has to be done. The person who guides this should be non-denominational as much as possible.
Okay.
And non-cultist. Because if it turns into a cult, it's another thing altogether.